Now it's time for lefties losing it, and we know the Democratic Socialist frontrunner for New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani has a resume the length of his arm, and apparently he can add accents to that as well. Here he is speaking to his fellow Ugandans.
You know, I'm from Uganda, but I also grew up in New York. In New York, you don't really, you go out, some guys are very hesitant to dance. You know, if they're not grinding, they're just standing. In Kampala, you will just not find that.
And here he is showing off his Arabic.
كعمدة رح جمد الإيجارات لأكثر من 2,000,000 شخص وخلي الباصات سريعة ومجانا وأضمن رعاية الأطفال شاملة لكل العائلات.
ويمكن ما فيني أقنعك إنه الكنافة النابلسية بستانواي أطيب من نيوجيرسي، بس بوعدكم إني رح أشتغل بكل جهدي لأسهل عليكم بفتح مشاريعكم الصغيرة.
Well, he's practically Kamala Harris 2.0. Remember how she used to rip out those accents after a couple of wines or two? And from the many accents to the many faces of Mamdani, the candidate has also gone on a vibes-only tour of New York, hitting the clubs instead of hitting policy.
Poppy Juice, how we doing? How we doing, Poppy Juice? You know, I just first want to say such a deep thank you to Poppy Juice.
Yeah, this is what happens when your whole campaign is based entirely around vibes and feels, and it just gets worse. Yeah, apparently this is the quid pro quo for the left. Rap and dance and sing like an idiot to try and win over the young vote. Are we supposed to buy this nightclub charm offensive? I don't know, because I'd call it more like a clown show. And in his final appearance, the socialist even made an appearance at a gay bar.
And I'm here because we only got 3 days until the election. 3 days. 3 days until we can win a city we can afford. So I'm asking all of you to get out there and vote.
Yeah, I mean, do these people think that Mamdani is actually going to give them everything for free and they'll just vibe away? Well, thank goodness for President Trump.
Some people have compared him to a left-wing version of you, charismatic, breaking the old rules. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I'm a much better looking person than him, right?
Now to California's own Ken doll, Gavin Newsom, whose Botox has clearly seeped into his brain.
Nothing I dislike more than the politician that sits there and lies to you. And we all just sit there rolling our eyes going, give me a break.
Yeah, how's the homelessness crisis going over there, Gavin? Illegal immigration, a budget deficit? No, wait, hang on. Sorry, I thought the politicians don't lie. Now to Barack Obama, who's having another Trump derangement syndrome-induced frenzy.
Our country and our politics are in a pretty dark place right now. It's hard to know where to start because every day this White House offers up a fresh batch of lawlessness and recklessness and mean-spiritedness and just plain craziness.
I mean, the funny thing is, it sounds like he was actually describing the Biden-Harris Obama-Biden years there, apparently. Now, look, can someone please, I'm begging you, give Nancy Pelosi some help?
I think he always has to be taken seriously because he's a very, very dangerous man. I think he has to be taken seriously because children are my issue. That's why I'm in politics. That's my why, for the children. He's the worst president children in America have had in our own history.
Poor woman. Poor, poor woman. She is acutely and chronically triggered, isn't she? And look, when all else fails, the left just resort to swearing. Here's the governor of Illinois.
They want to criminalize educators for supporting LGBTQ students. They want to turn classrooms into cultural war battlegrounds. And I'm sorry to be vulgar, but Donald Trump and his cronies can all the way off.
Yeah, swearing will do it for you. Now to one of the most dreadful women in America, Jennifer Welsh, who's having another totally normal one. Here is her latest diatribe.
We have an incompetent, dementia-ridden running the United States of America right now. He is so over his skis. It is so abundantly obvious. Shame on corporate media or any media that isn't covering this absolute mental decline the likes of which the world has never seen, to quote him, on full display.
I wonder where Jennifer was during the Biden years. Was she around? No, she wasn't, was she? Because the left never questioned his mental competence, did they? Lack of, when he was mumbling, bumbling, stumbling and falling. No, Jen wasn't around. Now to political commentator Ellie Mistel, who thinks we're all going to take him seriously with the comb in his hair.
Most of our Constitution, even the amendments, have been written and ratified exclusively by white, rich, land-holding men, right? There's not a single state that had a majority legislature of women that has ratified a single amendment in the current Constitution, right? So starting from the beginning and pulling that thread all the way through now, this is a white man's document, and it looks like.
And now to comedian Wanda Skies, who's completely broken. She's now claiming that she doesn't like hiring men or white people.
I'm gonna be up front with you. If when it comes to a position and I look on the paper and they right there, or she might be right here and he's up there, I'm hiring the woman. And that's just how I operate. And I'm be honest with you, if she's a black woman, you got the job. Girl, you got the job.
Yeah, because that's totally legal, isn't it? And gee, the left are just such hypocrites. Rapper Cardi B is now crying poor, would you believe, despite her wealth sitting at $80 million.
When was the last time y'all seen celebrities happy and or anybody like, oh yeah, I just bought a new house? The economy is up in all types of ways. Everybody's going through it. Every body is going through it. These companies, they're not giving money like how they used to before. Nobody's really benefiting but the super billionaires that own all the type of, those are the only people that's winning.
Well, it's been revealed the BBC used a doctored video of President Trump's January 6th speech, the day of the Capitol Hill riot, and mangled the timeline of the day's events in a documentary last year. According to a 19-page report on the BBC bias obtained by The Telegraph, the documentary, called Trump a Second Chance, materially misled viewers by splicing together clips of Trump's speech at the Stop the Steal rally to make it seem like he incited the riot at the US Capitol. Have a look.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Garda. Kosha, thanks for joining me. This is extraordinary. This happened at the BBC. This is the public broadcaster over there. Surely the BBC has to take accountability. Heads have to roll.
We would think, Danica, great to be with you, but I think history has shown that these corporate media outlets only have heads roll when they're really pushed into a corner and forced to. So we shall see what happens. This was quite extraordinary. It came through because Michael Prescott, a former advisor to their editorial standards committee, was a whistleblower and came through with these edits. And this in particular is even extra egregious because the whole narrative globally around J6 has really been one way, and piece by piece it's unraveling, as we know, and a lot of that is still being adjudicated, where they tried to frame it up as it was this direct incitement by the then sitting president of the United States that led to a, quote, insurrection, none of which actually was the case. There was a portion that devolved into riots. Those people were held accountable and then some. But this narrative has been very, very dangerous. And obviously President Trump is back, and this is being adjudicated right now. So with that as a backdrop, this is very, very bad for the BBC. It is taxpayer funded. And Trump has shown that he is not shy from filing lawsuits, civil lawsuits. He's done it to a lot of American media outlets. I don't know what he's going to do for the BBC, but this is just a breaking news story, and I don't think anyone will be surprised if he decides to go that route, even against the BBC.
Well, the BBC is meant to be the trusted public broadcaster over there, and this is an absolute disgrace. Meanwhile, CBS News program 60 Minutes heavily edited down an interview with Donald Trump that aired on Sunday night, his first sit-down with the show in 5 years. Trump spoke with correspondent Norah O'Donnell for 90 minutes, but only 28 minutes was broadcast. A full transcript was later published, along with a 73-minute long extended version online. Now, Kosher, obviously, 60 minutes traditionally cuts down interviews, but going back to what you were just saying earlier, I mean, Trump's not shy to sue outlets, and let's not forget that he sued CBS over the editing of a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris when she was vice president, which he alleged had been deceptively edited to help her chances in the presidential election.
Yes. So he sued. They did settle. I think it was $16 million. Notably, not with an apology or admission of guilt. It was just a settlement. They were in the middle of a takeover, and some speculated that was the reason for why they kind of did that, just for nuisance value, what have you. But another thing, more so than the money that came out of that settlement, is that they have agreed to always release the raw, unedited transcripts, and I believe the raw video from every interview. So while it's understandable that they, of course, have to edit things down to fit in the 1 hour time frame of the broadcast, in this day and age of the internet, by making that whole thing available, the internet will do its thing, and people can pick apart the transcript, see what was actually spoken, unfiltered, decide if there's something else that's actually more in the public interest than what CBS decided to include and what airs on TV when it goes live. So that is, I think, a step in the right direction, and it is a little bit of a check and balance against unscrupulous editing, which tends to happen. It's one thing if you're doing it for the format of television. It's another thing if you're making substantive differences from what was spoken, just like the BBC example, or even Trump's allegation with the Kamala Harris interview.
Yes, well, that's exactly right. Look, I mean, obviously programs do cut down their interviews, but in the interest of being transparent, I think it's important to have that transcript. Now, look, Donald Trump says he won't be extorted by the Democrats as this government shutdown, it is now approaching a record length. Have a listen.
The problem is they want to give money to prisoners, to drug dealers, to all these millions of people that were allowed to come in with an open border from Biden, and nobody can do that. I'm not going to do it by being extorted by the Democrats who have lost their way. There's something wrong with these people.
So then what happens on November 15th when the troops don't get a paycheck?
Schumer is a basket case, and he has nothing to lose. He's become, I just left Japan, he's become a kamikaze pilot.
Kosher, look, I think that Trump is rightly holding the line. I mean, the Democrats' demands for this shutdown have been absolutely absurd. How do you see this playing out? It's just going on and on.
Yes, the last record was 35 days in Trump's first term, and I think we're right around that now, or even surpassing it in short order. And it was definitely a stare down both times, because there's a lot of stuff that the government does that's not useful, and there's jokes going on all the time that, our day-to-day life isn't any worse, so it's great, let the government shut down so that they don't interfere in our lives. But there are some aspects where it does start to hurt everyday people, like traffic control or paying troops or other people that are performing vital services not getting paid. That does start to become a problem. And so typically, one side will stare down the other and hold those issues as the reason, the leverage to do so. Last time, it was President Trump who caved and in the end made concessions for whatever he was holding out for. This time it's different because the One Big Beautiful bill was passed before the shutdown, and that has by and large funded Trump's agenda and everything that he wants to do with deportations and the wall and tax cut permanency, etc. So it's really the other side that doesn't have leverage, the Democrats right now, and it's just a matter of who blinks. It looks like he is holding down the line since his agenda is funded, and he's got other means to provide relief for those other issues, and the Democrats are going to have to be the one to capitulate because they don't have leverage. But so far, they've surprised many, I think, by holding out as long as they have. So we shall see, but I think hopefully we're getting close to the end.
Well, you certainly hope so, but yeah, I don't think that Trump is going to back down. Doesn't seem that way. Now, look, we've got to talk about the ladies over at The View, the delightful ladies of The View. And Whoopi Goldberg, she's back at it again with more anti-Trump propaganda. Now, for some context, Donald Trump had pardoned crypto founder Changpeng CZ Zhao. But when Trump was asked during that 60 Minutes interview about the pardon, he said that he didn't know anything about it. Whoopi Goldberg then accused the president of using an auto pen. And watch now what happens as she actually got a correction note midway through the television show. It was passed on. Have a look.
When they're listening to, what the hell, what?
I love when Sonny passes notes.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part. It was a joke.
Yes. We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part.
Come on.
But we do know that he didn't know who that crypto guy was.
Well, I'm sorry. You know, the hardest thing about this job now is no one understands nuance.
They're very, very sincere, Kosher. They're definitely not sincere. But why do the left always make up nonsense when they get angry and caught out?
That one was actually quite funny to me, Danica, because usually when those notes come through, and I think they're like on their 8th or 9th note this year, the View ladies keep saying things and then have to issue corrections. It's coming through from the producer, and usually it's coming through from legal if you're saying something. And it's a pretty high bar, certainly in America with the First Amendment, to give a live on-air correction in that way. And I've sensed a little bit of insubordination there, where, you know, it was talent, Whoopi Goldberg, against the producer, who probably told Sunny Hostin to write that down, and maybe against their legal team. So that should be interesting to see how that one plays out. But I think everybody is a little bit gun shy, I think, right now of pulling the trigger, rhetorically speaking, against Trump and his supporters all the time because of these lawsuits that we just talked about and the fact that they have settled. The View's parent ABC also settled because George Stephanopoulos made incorrect statements about Trump, and that was one example. So I think that they're a little bit on a short leash, if you will, right now, and it sounds like that has really made Whoopi Goldberg, at least in that clip, very, very annoyed.
Well, you know what? Time to start talking fact then. You know, there's ways around. If you don't be trigger shy, you know, just tell the truth, I say. Now, look, let's take a look at the blind leading the blind, as I'll say. Former Labor Prime Minister Paul Keating says he gave Anthony Albanese some fighting points ahead of his meeting with Donald Trump last month. The meeting obviously did go quite well. They seemed to get along. So Paul Keating added, quote, "It turned out he didn't have to use them, didn't have to use his talking points, Kosher. But I can't think of anyone worse for the Prime Minister to have advice from."
And I want to know, what were these fighting points? That would that would be quite interesting. It would make a lot of news, I think. The meeting did go quite well. I will say, in Prime Minister Keating's defense, he did express a little bit of nuance back in the day during Trump's first term in terms of his understanding of Trump's approach to China, Trump's approach to the trade war, etc., when many others from both sides of politics around the world were not expressing any of that understanding. So maybe just in that domain, he felt that he was more qualified or more experienced, I should say, than Prime Minister Albanese, and thought he could lend a helping hand. Who knows? But yes, in general, they don't see the world, by and large, with maybe some exceptions, through the same lens as Trump. They have to deal with him because he is in the Oval Office right now, and it's the strongest ally, and everybody will do it in their way. I think Prime Minister Albanese has very much played defense and passive, I would say, right now, up until now, but it looks like things are moving a little bit in the right direction, and Paul Keating maybe just wanted to be in the news cycle, and that's why he put that out there.
Yes, I agree. He loves to just trot out a couple of news lines every now and then, make himself feel relevant, Kosher. Now, look, an Anti-Semitism Research Institute has released an 11th hour report about its concerns over New York City socialist mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. It explains the controversial views of his father, a professor at Columbia University, on Israel, as well as how Zohran founded the Students for Justice in Palestine chapter while he was in college. It also details his past statements and positions on it, and lists the anti-Israel individuals who endorse him for mayor. Kosher, by all accounts, he's going to win this. How worried must the Jewish community be?
I think, worried, as are business owners, as are just everyday taxpayers, all sorts of people who are going to bear the brunt of his policy agenda, which he has made no secret of throughout this campaign. The interesting thing to me in this, though, is that the Jewish community in New York, which is the largest diaspora of Jewish people outside of Israel in the entire world, live in New York City, just shy of a million of them. 40% of them still support Mamdani, and among the crowd under the age of 45, including Jewish people, support him and are voting for him. So that is the thing over here, I think, that's impossible to ignore, that despite these statements that he's made and the studies that are coming out, they are not lining up against him. They could have voted for Cuomo. They could have supported the Republican candidate, Sliva. They have not. They're voting him in. And, as the saying goes, you get the government you vote for. And unfortunately, that is what's going to happen here. And they are going to have to suffer the consequences.
Yeah, it's going to be an absolute disaster. And, he's trying to get the young vote now, going out to clubs. I just feel like his whole policy is based on vibes, not actual policy. So we'll see how it goes. Kosher, before we let you go, I want to get your reaction to Bill Maher. He's, I think, a recovering TDS sufferer, but he appeared on a podcast and called out Jimmy Kimmel for not thanking him after he defended Kimmel following his suspension. Have a look at this.
Jimmy apparently doesn't like me too much anymore because he thanked everybody but me, and I was adamant about supporting him that week and the next week. My problem with him and hosts like that, quite frankly, they're all quite similar in this regard, is that they're ideologically captured by one side. It's just not what I do or what I'm doing. And there's a reason why half the country feels insulted by them and has turned off to them.
Kosher, I thought that was an interesting point that he made at the end there, that he said half the country is turned off. Do you agree?
For sure. He's right there. We can see it in the ratings. This whole genre of late night television, an American creation in its heyday of Johnny Carson and that era, was really just something so unique, so beloved culturally. It set the tone. It made fun of both sides. They didn't take themselves too seriously. And people would sit down at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. and watch these shows live. And we've come a long way from that for many reasons, structurally, with the media, other forms of entertainment that compete with them and all of that. But a big reason is this, that they just somehow devolved from being equal opportunity offenders and comedians to being very politically charged, very much on one side. And yes, half the country that supports the right side of the aisle does not find them funny at all, doesn't find that content worth spending an hour listening to. And Bill Maher, once in a while, he is of the left, but he does pop up here and there and speak sanity and fairness a little bit. And this would be an example of where, he did that. And it sounds like he's really hurt by the fact that he didn't get gratitude publicly from Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, very, very clear. Kosher Gada, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate your time.